Welcome to Rhasspy in Depth. Today I'll be talking about how to write custom voice commands. In Rhasspy, you put your custom voice commands into a file called sentences.ini. The documentation has a large amount of information about the syntax of this file. I'll be going over a few cases here, so you can learn about how to create new intents, new commands, and then some of the more advanced features like slot programs and converters. For the simplest cases, you can simply write the name of your intent in brackets. In this case, I'm going to have a getTime intent, and then you can just write out the sentences that you want to be recognized. So I'm going to write, what time is it, and tell me the time. So these two sentences go on different lines, and when they're spoken, they will invoke a getTime intent. So let's go ahead and save and retrain Rhasspy. And now if I come out here to the test page and choose to wake the system up, what time is it? You'll see that it invokes the getTime intent. Same thing if I say the other sentence, tell me the time. Okay, and if we inspect the actual JSON, you can get some more information. Here it's not terribly interesting. There's just the words that were spoken and then the intent that came back. For something a little more complicated, let's create an intent that will change the state of a light. I'll call this change light state. So this is intended to turn a light on or off. To represent that, we can use the pipe character here. So this means you can say on or off. And then I'll say I'll put living room lamp, or something like a bedroom light. So these would be the names of the lights. Now if we go ahead and retrain with just this, we can come back and test. Turn on the bedroom light, and you'll see it will invoke the change light state intent. But that's not terribly useful if we're going to actually do something with this intent, because we'd have to actually parse the sentence on the other side in Node-RED or Home Assistant or something. So what Rhasspy lets you do is annotate these pieces with what are called tags. And so I'm going to mark what's inside the parentheses here as the state of the light, and then what's inside here as the name of the light. Now when we do that, turn on the living room lamp. Now we get a little bit more information in the intent. We actually have a name slot and a state slot that come back. And if we look at the JSON, we can scroll down here and see in the slots the two pieces of information that we want actually came through directly. There's also some more information up in the entities. This actually lists the pieces of the text, the indices, and then some more information if you're doing something more advanced. Something that might get useful as you add more names to something here is you can break this out into something called a rule. So say we have light names. The equal sign here says that instead of being an actual sentence, this is a rule name, and this is the rule body. So in here we can reference that rule with the angle brackets. And we could add something else, something like kitchen lights. So now when we retrain with this, we should be able to say any of these three lights in here and either of these two states. Turn off the kitchen lights, and here you can see it comes through. Next, let's add an intent where we use a slot list. I'm going to create a change light color intent, and here we're going to set the color of a light to some particular color name. I'm going to actually mark the as an optional word, so you can leave it out or you can say it. And we're going to say the name of a particular light. Now, we've already written out some light names here in the change light state intent, so we can actually reuse them directly by referencing the intent and the name of the rule And we gotta surround that with angle brackets. So we'll say change the light name to, and we're gonna say colors in here. I'm gonna start off by actually writing them out. So here, let me save that and retrain. So now we should be able to say something like set the name of a light to a color. Set the bedroom light to red. Now we can see that that came out in the color slot, and we were able to reuse our names. But if we were to have a lot of colors, it would get a little tough to keep adding them to this, even with a rule split out. So we're going to go in and create a new slot here. So we'll create a new slot named colors. And here on each line we can just specify the value we want. We can say red, green, blue. This is also a similar syntax to inside the sentences INI itself. So we could actually add something like rouge and then put a substitution value in here. So what you speak is on the left-hand side of the colon, and what comes out is on the right-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and save this slot and choose not to retrain just yet. I'll come back into sentences, and instead of the literal list in here, I'm going to reference it with a $sign. So I'll say use the colors slot that I defined over here in my slots list. Now I'll retrain, and I should be able now to come say set the kitchen lights to rouge. And when that comes through, you can see it actually output red. If we look at the JSON, let's go look for the color, we can see that the raw value of it was actually rouge, and it output the substituted value. And here down in the colors, you see it comes out as red in the slots. Let's do a common task here, which is setting a timer for something. We'll create a new set timer intent. And in this case, I'm only going to talk about some number of minutes and seconds. So the general format's going to be, you can say set a timer with an optional word a for some number of minutes or seconds or some combination of the two. So I'm going to I'll write the rule next. We'll say have some minutes, some seconds, and then some minutes, optionally with the word and followed by some number of seconds. So let's write these two rules. We want to have anywhere from 1 to 59 minutes. So you can use the number range syntax here, 1.59, and what Rhasspy will do is for your language, whether it's English or something else, it will insert the words for all of this into your sentences INI, and then we'll automatically convert them to integers on the other side. So what I'm going to do is wrap this and say I want to capture that number in a min slot, and then we'll have minutes. Actually, to make this a little better, let me say we can either say 1 minute or 2 to 59 minutes, and we'll capture both of these. Repeat the same thing for seconds, and we'll call this an SEC slot to capture that. So this should let us speak about 1 to 59 minutes and 1 to 59 seconds, or a combination of the two. So let's go ahead, save and retrain. Now when we come out here, set a timer for 10 minutes. Okay, we'll see that 10 came through in the min slot. If we actually look at the JSON, scroll down to slots, this is coming across as an integer value in the JSON itself. Should also be able to say set a timer for 1 minute and 30 seconds. Okay, so now they both come across, and if you were grabbing this downstream, you could just grab min and sec slots here and do some kind of processing. In Node-RED, you could actually use JavaScript to set a timer and respond to it. The last thing we'll do for this timer intent is we'll add one more form to this to say set a timer for 1.5 minutes, just to show off one more feature here. So let's add, we'll say 1.5 minutes, and what we wanted to actually turn this into is 1 minute and 30 seconds. So I'm going to say that the 1 goes in the min slot, and then we'll say a half will actually go in the sec slot. But what we want to do here is actually substitute the value 30 instead of the text a half. Now when we do this, I'll show you what happens, and we need to do one more edit to make this work perfectly. Set a timer for 1.5 minutes. Okay, it looks like it came across okay, but if we actually look at the JSON, what we'll see down here is that 30 here came across as a string value. And that's what happens normally with substitutions. Rhasspy will just interpret this as a string you want and put in there. What we can do is actually use something called a converter. So we put an exclamation point and then the name of a converter, and a couple of are available automatically, float, int, and a few others from Python. So what this will do is when it reaches this 30, it will actually send it through the int function and then output an actual integer into the JSON. So let's retrain. Set a timer for 1.5 minutes. Now when we go into the JSON, we can see that down in the slots, now this is an actual integer. And you can see that the substituted text actually shows the numeric value. If we find, here we go, if we find raw text in here, however, you'll see the words coming across. So it's the difference between the raw, where it was what was literally spoken, versus the text, where all the substitutions are taken into account. The last thing I want to show is a slot program. So rather than having just a static text file in your profile, you can actually write a program that when Rhasspy is trained, it will just output the values on each line of the standard out. To demonstrate this, I'm going to create an intent named add to shopping list. And what we're going to do is have a program that prints out a number of things that can go into your shopping list. So I'm going to say add a or an. I've written the program called words. I'm going to tag this as the item to add to my shopping list. So depending on what the program words here prints out, it could be anything. Add a blank to my shopping list. Now I've already written this program. This is really simple. It's just a bash script named words with no extension. It's put inside the profile. There's a directory called slot_programs. You can read about this in the documentation, exactly where it's supposed to go. And what this does on a Linux system, it's just catting out the American English dictionary I have. I'm looking for something that's made up entirely of lowercase letters, no punctuation, no uppercase, and then I'm grabbing the first 1,000 items out of that. So it should start in the A's and put out 1,000 words. I'm going to go ahead and save. And it's going to take a little bit longer to train this time. And it turns out there's actually, of the 1,000 words, 150 Rhasspy isn't sure how to pronounce. What Rhasspy does, though, is it goes through and actually attempts to guess all of these different words and how they're supposed to be pronounced. So you could try saying them. This is kind of an odd case since there's so many words that are outside of the pronunciation dictionary, but you at least have some guess in there. Now if we come back, I'm not sure exactly what all's in here, but based on my knowledge of a dictionary, aardvark should be pretty near the top. So I should be able to say add an aardvark to my shopping list. And you can see now it's picked that up and tagged that as an item. in the shopping list. Now each time Rhasspy gets trained, it will actually go and rerun that program. So we can modify this to change the number of words or change the filter here or anything like that. Really, this can be any program in any language, as long as it's marked as executable and starts with a shebang line at the top. You can run whatever you want, and every time Rhasspy's trained, it will run your program and take the values that it gets and just insert those directly into your sentences INI. Alright, I hope you've learned a lot. Thank you.